Good afternoon. Welcome to the National Press Club, the place where news happens. My name's Emily Wilkins. I have the honor of being the 117th president here at the National Press Club and a DC correspondent for CNBC. And thank you guys so much for joining us at the Press Club this afternoon for our headliners event with the one and only Brooke Shields. Thank you. Brooke Shields is the newly elected president of the Actors Equity Association, and huge thanks to those of you who are joining our discussion online or by tuning in on C-SPAN television and radio. We are happy to accept questions from the audience and will take as many as time permits. If you want to send a question, please email headliners@press.org and write Shields in the subject line. That is .org, not .com. I think some of you also might have cards on your table. Yay? Nay? Great. If you have those and you want to pass them to Cecily, if you can give a quick wave from the back, she will actually digitize them and make sure they get in this fancy tablet right here because we are now a part of the 21st century. Very exciting. In the theater world, applause is, of course, accepted, common, and welcome. So for those of you watching online or on C-SPAN, please know that we have members of the general public, including quite a few theater fans, yay, that are in the audience today. So any applause or reaction you may hear is from them, not necessarily the working press. And now it is my pleasure. I know, that always good line gets a laugh. It's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished head table guests. Please stand up when your name is called, and for our audience, if you could just hold your applause until the end. Starting from my right, I think, is Al here? Did Al disappear?
Al is.
Oh, Al is there.
Al is on your left.
All right. We're gonna do a little bit of potpourri here. So just feel free to stand up and wave when I give your name a call. Al Vincent Jr., Executive Director of the Actors Equity Association and a guest of our speaker. Next to him, we have Ian Colgren, who is a labor reporter at Bloomberg and a fellow Michigan State Spartan. We have Sarah Wire. Yay! Sarah Wire, the senior national political correspondent for USA Today. Going back over here, we have Donna Limon-Liger, who's the president of DC Media Strategies, the co-leader of our Headliners Committee, and one of the past presidents of the National Press Club. We have Jamie Horwitz, media consultant with P-Work, a member of our Headliners team and the organizer of today's event. Jamie, thank you so much. We have Liz Schuler, president of the National Labor Federation, the AFL-CIO, guest of the speaker, previous headliners. We have Jason Dick, the editor-in-chief of Roll Call, a newspaper covering Capitol Hill. And I think we have Matthew Loeb. He's not here, but we wish him well, wherever he may be. And we have Ted Johnson, the political editor of Deadline, a news organization that covers entertainment. The 2018-2019 season on Broadway was the highest grossing and best attended theater season in history. We had The Lion King, we had Hamilton, love Hamilton, with sales of cast recordings, tickets from touring shows, and other revenue sources are included, each made over $1 billion. Other shows also saw record profits and sold out theaters. Actors were busy. But the next season was Broadway's worst. The curtain came down on Broadway and on regional theaters across the country for a crippling 18 months as the COVID-19 pandemic struck. And it wasn't just live theater. Museums, orchestras, operas, other arts venues also struggled, some closed permanently. Culture took a hit, and so did the communities where arts are located. Theater and musical performances saw crowds that filled restaurants, parking lots, hotels, not only in major cities like here in DC or in New York, but also in smaller cities coast to coast. Now, much has been written about workers being slow to return to the office and the economic hardship that has caused. And while people have headed back to concerts and live sporting events, live theater attendance still lags that of pre-pandemic times. According to the Broadway League, overall earnings or grosses for Broadway shows this season were slightly down from last season. And what's more, this season was down 17% from the last full season before the pandemic. Today, there are fewer theaters, fewer productions, and fewer performances than there were prior to the pandemic. Could some of that economic pain be reversed by investing in arts and using theater to draw office workers and visitors back to their old stomping grounds? Our guest today, Brooke Shields, believes that government at all levels should invest in the arts, and she also believes that performers on the live stage should be helped, not hurt, by government action. Ms. Shields is a Renaissance woman, and I say that not just because she graduated with a degree in Romance languages from Princeton, but because of her many roles. On stage, in film, a best-selling author, top fashion model, as an entrepreneur, and now as a labor leader. And she's also a mom of 2 college-age girls. Ms. Shields has literally been in the spotlight for half a century in ads, movies, TV shows, and in Broadway, off-Broadway, and regional theater productions. She recently starred in one of Netflix's 10 most watched films of 2024, Mother of the Bride. Last year, her life was the focus of a documentary on Hulu. In June, she launched a new company, Commence, that provides a new approach to hair care for women. And a month earlier, she was elected president of the Actors Equity Association, the national union for actors on the live stage and their stage managers. Equity, as it's commonly called, is an affiliate of the AFL-CIO and represents 51,000 stage actors and managers. And with that, I get to say, give a huge press club welcome to Brooke Shields. Brooke, thank you. So now that I've rambled on for a good 5 minutes,
yes.
I would just want to begin by handing the floor to you and just sort of see if there's any comments that you just want to start off as far as why you're here today, why in DC, and why at the Press Club.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody who has been so lovely and welcoming me with such open arms. This is the first time I've ever been to DC in this capacity. We spent a great deal of time on the Hill yesterday and met with many people on each side of the aisle, and it was not only just a wonderful education, but it was so great to just see how much excitement there was for equity and for what we're doing. I'm used to being in this sort of position in front of all of you, but for something that I fixed or I did a movie or something. But this dynamic is the first for me, and I have to say it's more emotional and it resonates so much more with me because this is about not me and not a movie or a thing, but about something so much bigger that affects so many people. And I just, that's very special for me, and it's an honor to be able to be asked to be a part of all that.
Yeah. So, well, you did run, and you were elected.
I did run.
So talk to me about why you decided to run now for the president of a union.
And theater in particular has been the most constant in my life. The people, the shows, the regional theaters, the small little theaters across the country, the touring that I've done, all of those areas have been so instrumental in my life with regards to welcoming me when nobody else was welcoming me. Really sort of looking at me and asking the most of me from a performer standpoint, putting me in positions that I was out of my comfort zone, but showing me that they had my back. And when you do that for over 30 years, and you really look at how all of your teammates are being taken care of or not taken care of, it eats at you. And when the position became available, I honestly never thought I would. But as I've spent so much time talking to stage managers and the chorus and the ensemble and other actors and musicians and all of the people, all of those workers, we call all of them art workers. Those are the people that put these projects and these shows up so that we bring communities together, so that economically we're feeding into individual communities. Those are the people that have had my back, and I felt that I would be remiss if I didn't use a platform that I know I have to better their lives the way they've bettered mine, and in turn, as an equity member for over 3 decades, improve all of our lives. But that's why I put my hat in the ring.
Yeah. And I am fascinated. You say that they had your back when no one else did. Is there any particular incident or moment that really stands out for you and helps exemplify that?
I came out of college thinking that everybody was going to celebrate that I was not only an actress, but I was educated. And especially Hollywood, you know, they love educated actresses. And so I was like, oh, this is great. There are a lot of the same press that they've, you know, been with me since I'm 13 and, you know, attacked me since I'm 13. But now I'm going to be able to answer them with an education. And I was really shocked at how hard it was for me to get any type of a job in the arts. And I had left at a very, I don't know, a high. I don't think creatively at a high, but fame-wise and celebrity-wise, that was at a high. And then I came out having so much more to give and so much more to bring to the work that I do, and nobody wanted me. And I wasn't box office anymore, and you know, I was young. And theater was the first place that said, we want to welcome you back. We want you to do regional theater. We want you. I was given a job on Broadway, and that sounds obnoxious to your first time ever really doing a big production being on Broadway. But this was at the start of stunt casting. And stunt casting was when somebody, a celebrity, basically came in and kind of took the job from a very capable actress or actor. And I was given this sort of proposal that said, we need you to keep the show open. Can you do it? And I had never done it before. I had been in theater in university, but had never done that before. And so I was thrown in, and in 9 days, had to learn an entire show. And had to do all of the press for it.
And which show, remind me which show this was?
Grease. It was Grease. I replaced Rosie O'Donnell. We often get confused for each other. And she's a friend. And they said, we need you to be Rizzo. And I said, oh, you mean you're not even asking me to be Sandy? I was like, I love you people even more. Because I'd been sort of Sandy in everybody's eyes my whole life. And it's just not the truth. And so here was this opportunity, and I felt guilty about it in the beginning because I knew there were so many really talented people who wanted to have jobs in theater. And then I realized I could keep the show open longer, and that in turn gave not only the actresses, the ensembles and the chorus, but the stage managers and everybody working in the house and in front of the house, behind the house, gave them an opportunity to continue earning a living. And so I then decided that would be, I felt okay about it. I didn't feel like I was stealing something. I felt like I was contributing.
Sure. And so sort of being able, the theater world gave that to you, and then you were able to kind of give back to them in that way.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about why you think live theater has struggled to rebound post-pandemic.
I think there's still a lot of fear. I think economically, there's so much that's happened that people took a hit. I know we're going to get to this later, but certain things from 2017 have actually made that even worse. I think people, they don't necessarily know that that actors don't. We're employees. We're not protected, in the same way. And so our taxes and our wages are different than a 9-to-5 person. So there are protections that aren't extended. And again, we'll get into that a little bit later, but because of certain tax bills and things that have changed and things that have not necessarily by by anybody's meaning, it just was inadvertent. Actors and all those who are arts workers have really took a hit. They've taken a hit on many levels, and it's hard for people to get back to doing what they do. And most of these people have 2-3 jobs, some of them.
Sure. And so let's get into that, because you were on Capitol Hill, as you said, this week. You were meeting with lawmakers yesterday. Tell me what you were meeting with them about, and what are the asks?
I'm only smiling because I have like a Dear Diary moment in my head. I'm like, Dear Diary, on Capitol Hill, I never thought those words would come out of my mouth. But what we did was we met with very many people. And basically our whole function was to talk about arts funding and talk about tax parity for arts workers. And we went into each room and answered a lot of questions and talked to senators. And we were, right now, the Tax Parity Act, we already have about, I think, a little over 90 co-sponsors. But yesterday was about getting more co-sponsorship and finding the right people that would help push this through.
You mentioned the Tax Parity Act, so now I'm
Yes.
going to put you on the spot to define the Tax Parity Act to the room.
So we're calling it PATPA. So, and it's the professional, I know I'm going to say this with my head, but.
You know what, this town runs on acronyms,
No,
so.
I know, well, PATPA, that I finally understood because it's the Parity Tax Act. But what was so interesting yesterday was we went through this whole other alphabet of different things that I was trying to, and it was one of those moments where I was like, I'm never going to remember all of this. But the Tax Parity Act is what we have been pushing forward, because what people don't realize is that we used to be able to deduct all of our business expenses that would pertain to us being able to do our job. So that's business managers, agents, classes, courses, auditions, being able to dance classes and singing lessons and coaches and all of these things. We used to be able to actually deduct those. And then on 2017, what happened was that went by the wayside. And Reagan in 1986 had put in this law that had this tax act that was to help those performers actually have those tax deductions. What happened in 17, that went by the wayside, and cumulatively, actors started going into the office to be able to declare their taxes, and it went from a few $100s to thousands of dollars, and that undid many people. And yeah.
It sounds like this doesn't only impact the actors, but this impacts the voice coaches, the managers, the agents, as kind of everyone in that wider theater community gets hit, because if you can't deduct something with taxes, maybe you think twice about whether or not you should have that service. Would that be a fair way to frame it?
And then when you add up all those services, it ends up being almost 30% of what the wages are. And so there's no incentive to do it. And then how does someone do their work? And it was explained to me yesterday too that we don't think of it in terms of all of those people that you just mentioned. But we also don't think of it in terms of tools to be able to do your craft. And those are the tools that we need to do our craft, to be able to audition. And what's so unbelievable too about this is that these are the tools you need, and you're still not guaranteed to get the job. So this money is being spent, it's not being able to be deducted, and then there's no guarantee of having a job. So this is affecting people across the board. And then when you look at the trickle down of that, how when they're not able to do their job, we're not able to bring live theater into different communities. I think we were doing the math yesterday, and that each time someone goes to see a live show, they're also adding about average $39 back into the economy, because you've got transportation, you've got dinner, maybe drinks, maybe babysitting, maybe. So there's this, when you're gathering people, and people really want to be able to gather together in the atmosphere of a theater and experience art together.
And you mentioned that there was a tax piece that you're working on. Is 90 co-sponsors at this point, I believe you said. Bipartisan as well.
All bipartisan. Everything that equity really does and focuses on is all bipartisan. And we've had both people, Congress and senators across the aisle really support us. Which has been Congressman Chu, as well as Buchanan, have been there with us from the beginning.
Sure.
Warner has as well, and Tillis. These are people that have championed us from the beginning, and all the work has been done to get us to this point. But now we really, in the interest of time, and in the interest of what's going on, we need to be able to push this further through.
Absolutely, and it's good timing, because I'm sure many of us know there's a big tax debate that's brewing next year. There's a deadline. Congress sometimes actually moves when there are deadlines. Very exciting. You also mentioned funding, and I know that this is another big thing that you guys are advocating for in terms of federal funding. Talk to me a little bit about what some of your asks are there.
We want more funding. I mean, you know, it's just arts funding cannot be, and in recent days, we've seen how that certain people have changed that, and it's an oversight, it's dangerous. It is something that needs to be remedied. I hope it is remedied. You cannot cut the arts. You just can't. And what that does to an economy, and it's interesting, we were talking on the Hill, and when we were discussing things, we were in one discussion, and it was brought to my attention that what we're asking for is to help people follow their dreams. And I said, you know, that's great, and the touchy-feely part of what the arts is fabulous, but we need to really acknowledge the economic impact of arts funding, because what that does and what that feeds into communities, and we're not talking about the rich people in Hollywood. Like, arts funding, when it happens, is going to these mini theaters, these regional theaters. These, you know, they're going, you've got in this town, Drunk Shakespeare, and there's so many different smaller, but not less important, arts programs that are all across the country that need this money. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the people that we were talking to yesterday sort of had this impression that, oh, but you know what? It's all movies and film. Well, no, equity is theater. Mm-hmm. SAG is television, movies, radio, film, television, radio. There's a big difference there. And when we talk about arts funding with equity, we're talking about putting that money into all of the fabric of what makes lives better and communities vibrant. So I was shocked at how many people thought, oh, well, that's just gonna, you know, go into Tom Hanks's pocket. And you're like, well, no, that's actually not it. We're talking about the stage manager, the choreographer, the person in town who has other jobs and has kids, but then gets a role in something that she's proud of, and it brings the community together. That's where the touchy-feely part comes, but the economy and the boost for the economy, that is what I think is the most important part to discuss, especially in DC.
And especially when you think of, I think a lot of times people think of Hollywood as, you know, being in Hollywood, in California, but you think about live theater, and there's so many towns across the country that have a theater, that have folks who work there, that have folks who do productions. What do you kind of see the role for theater and then post-pandemic? Because I feel like we keep hearing this drumbeat narrative that downtowns aren't back, cities aren't back. Do you think there's a correlation there between the arts and coming back post-pandemic?
I think there's a correlation in all of it. I mean, I was able to just recently go to Nantucket. You know, I've played Bucks County. These are all sort of smaller houses that are vibrant. And I think coming out of the pandemic, it's all related. I mean, when you have a vibrant community, you've got people coming into the community, you're feeding into the lives of the people that work in that community, in the restaurants. And so there's this, I think it all feeds into it. Mm-hmm. And then you've got communities that are proud of their community. And I'm not addressing crime or anything like that, but there is something to be said with a vibrant city having the backbone of what they do be protective of the city that they're in.
Absolutely. I want to get into a bit of a wonky question because I know we have the right room for it. This week, the AFL-CIO's Department for Professional Employees, which equity of course is associated with, they came out with some policy statements, and I understand that one of those deals with nonprofits that get federal funding but sometimes will underpay their actors. Can you just talk a little bit about that issue and what you guys are trying to do to solve for it?
Well, think about how that sounds. Okay, get a grant and still don't use the grant for what the grant is for. So to me, that's infuriating because there should be protections that are in place that are for labor protections. And that's one path of it. There should be penalties if those protections are not met, mm-hmm. because that's cheating, you know, and it really angers me because we go through all of this to get the grant, mm-hmm. and then there's no protections as to the follow-through of the grant. And you see too often, and listen, federal funding, you know, we always want it to be more. It should always be more. It does feel like a drop in the bucket when you look at the numbers, and yet we're sort of told we have to be happy with what we get. And you know what? I'd rather have it than not have any of it at all. But you can't just you can't not pay attention to what happens the next few steps.
Absolutely. I also want to ask, we've got a couple questions from the audience. One of them notes that dozens of newsrooms have unionized in the past decade. In what areas can the News Guild and Actors Equity join forces on?
Wait, say that one more time.
So, journalists are unionizing.
Oh yes, okay.
Actors are unionizing. Where can we team up?
I think unionizing, we've not only always fully understood. We recently, there is a group of artists that came to us towards at the end of the pandemic and wanted to organize, and they were from Disney. And I think there are so many different ways that that groups can organize to join a union that then ends up protecting itself. And I think that I think it's all progress, and I think that it's important. And I think also, I've been able to get to know certain people a little bit. So many of us travel around and just talk to equity members, and we talk to people. And when you start talking to the people in that field, whatever it is, you start to realize that there is a through line as to what they feel they're not getting, or they feel that they need. So I think the first thing to do is really talk to the people that you're interested in helping, or talk to the people that you feel you're not being represented by, or that you would like to be represented by. And I think that it's the conversation is the most important piece of it, because the more you listen to other people, then you start realizing, what you need to fight for next. You mentioned too, with Disneyland and the strike that was going on there, and that Equity is organized, I think it's 1,700 workers who perform as characters at Disneyland. Talk to me a little bit about what happened there, what's the story of the workers, and how did they wind up unionizing them? What are they fighting for? Well, they're fighting sort of what everybody else is fighting for, having safe environments to work in. Now these actors, they're working all the time. During the pandemic, they were really not treated well. And they came out of it hurt and let down and scared. And they ended up, a small group of them, it was a group of them, it's not all of them, but that's important to us. We took that to heart, and there are 1,700 of them, and we now are going to begin being able to negotiate with them. I mean, the beauty of having a union is that they can speak for you. And I think coming out of the pandemic and coming out of all the hard work and that they have given their lives to have the company that is sort of their boss not take care of them, had to have been crushing and had to have been heartbreaking. And they approached us, and then we've been in negotiations with them to really put together, having them come in and feel that we've got their back. Sure. Are they asking for, is this more of a wage thing? Is this workplace safety? Is it harassment? It's wages, it's harassment, it's equity, it's safety. There's so much, especially with Disney, that you'd be shocked that they're not precautions. It's like now I need to know what some of these things I'm going to be shocked about are. Well, like think of the hydraulics. Think of all this. Think of the stunts. Like for the rides. Or the flying. I mean, poor Peter Pan. And Tinkerbell. Don't get me started. But that there's so many safety concerns, and even things like. Okay, I'll talk about Broadway as well, but even things like covers. With stage managers, if there's not a second stage manager and they get sick, they have to still go to work. They're not covered by anybody. A dance track, I'm sure they have, but they don't have multiple covers for a lot of these Disney performers. God forbid they get hurt or sick, and now they're going on sick or they're going on injured, and they're perhaps injuring themselves for the future. Sure. So when we talk about what we want to protect, it's all of those people within Disney, within their productions, so you would be shocked at thinking, oh, no, come on, you put somebody in a harness and you're not necessarily safe, or you don't have proper provisions for these people. There's just human provisions for people that are really, excuse me, but busting their ass multiple shows a day.
Sure, and to be in a place where, it's supposed to be fun and family friendly and children friendly and all that. Is there something, and I know this might have begun before you took on your current role, but in talking to members, do you have a sense of how this union came about? Was it, because I imagine for some of these conditions might have been around for a while, what was the light bulb moment when they were just like, we should unionize?
I don't actually know the exact moment. I can probably get more of that information.
And I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Well, no, because I came in when it was basically a done deal. So I don't know what the light bulb moment. I don't know if most organizing has a light bulb moment. I think it's a bunch of these performers organized themselves, and then they came to us and said, we're tired of feeling this way. We're tired of not being protected. And we hear from equity members that there are protections in place. We understand that they're experiencing the need for the Tax Parity Act as well. So when everybody talks, and even though we're 51,000 people, we are a small, the way we all communicate is kind of like a big family. And they wanted to be protected by that family. And so I don't know if it was one light bulb moment. I don't know, someone else can answer it for me, but I'd be happy to get that answer if there was one and get it back to you.
And it might be exactly as you say, that it was just a bunch of small things adding up over time. I just know that there's a push. I know Liz and I were talking a little bit about kind of the push for unions and how that seems to be becoming more and more of a common thing. But I also wanted to ask you about, I think, another strike that's currently going on, and this is about shows that are currently in development.
So,
Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, with regards to the Broadway League, we have very different philosophies. And it's a situation that we really came to a head on, and we weren't willing to budge. And we're in for the long haul. And that I think when you have two separate philosophies coming at what is fair and what is not fair, that's a hard argument. And when you're talking about development, people don't really understand. That's rehearsal rooms. That's not just stage managers and the actors and then the swings, but you've got rehearsal rooms. There's so much that goes into it. And then to have these stage managers have to be there for another put-in, even if they were not necessarily put in development, but bringing people in and then not getting paid for that. There's so many little teeny things like that people that are doing the work day in and day out are not getting compensated for. So when you look at how that works, or when you look at the stage managers not being covered by anybody, even in development, it's not fair. So we locked horns, and we're patient.
And I think you guys have been on strike since June, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And so it seems to be kind of a reoccurring thing that there's so many people.
What I will say equity did, though, I'm so sorry, but what I was very proud, because again, I inherited all of this, was that if there was anything that was already in motion, we weren't pulling the rug, we didn't pull the rug out from under them, we didn't halt everything. We allowed those, and then there was a deadline as to nothing new after that. And I just think that that's indicative of what equity does. They understand fair, and they understand fighting for really what is fair. But they didn't destroy months of people's work because on that day there was a strike. They took care of the members.
Got it. And at this point, kind of going forward, what do you sort of see as the next steps here in that process? Yes.
I mean, we're holding pretty strong, and we're pretty stubborn, and I think we're willing to wait this one out. And the sort of the thing that makes me be able to sleep at night with that is this is all potential for the future. This isn't the same as when when actors went on strike and nobody could do anything, with SAG. So I think that I believe in my heart that the right thing will happen. And I don't know if philosophies will be able to change, but I think when we keep paying attention to how detrimental each day is that goes by for the future of theater and for the future of these people who, they can't develop. And then there's the problem of people that are trying to do it under the table, we have a problem with them.
You mentioned SAG-AFTRA a couple times. I know obviously they had a very high-profile strike previously. A lot of that was dealing with things like streaming revenue, with AI. Are those also concerns for the stage actors?
They're all concerns. There's a joke, and again, I say New York, but we're talking about all other cities, obviously, not just the kind of, the Broadway ones. But there's a joke that if you go to CSI, if you see CSI, you'll always see a bunch of Broadway actors. And so we, as performers, as arts performers, you want to do your art no matter what medium it is. So that affected equity members. That it just didn't affect SAG. The performing arts are really could have come into very many different mediums, and so they were equally as affected by it.
Got it.
As many of them use the recurring or the commercial work or as their form of income, residuals or appearances on shows, or and many of them are doing these shows in the day and then they at night go to theater.
Oh wow!
And do their job.
I didn't realize that there was sort of the double duty there.
Oh,
so it's very much impacts that.
Very much, and there's so many. Because work is work and art is what we do, and so we want to do it in any capacity that we can. And if it's on a show that's shooting in, they know to get you out. They know ahead of time. They have to get you out by curtain.
Sure. And so looking forward then, do you feel like those issues have been, at least for now, resolved with the conclusion of the strike? Or are there other things that you're looking, protections for your members when it comes to the future of AI, the future of technology?
I can't speak to SAG because I'm not
totally
representing
and
SAG.
To be clear, just
right,
equity.
Okay, the equity. I think that when you, whatever, well, that's two questions, because what was resolved, there was still a lot that wasn't resolved for SAG. With regards to equity and things like streaming, things like AI, things like all of these things, that's the beauty of having a union, is you have a voice within these conversations. And we as a union are listening to how other unions are dealing with it. So the conversation is open, and that's what we need to know as performers, is that the power of a union is there to help navigate things such as AI and streaming. And then also to keep the message alive that on the one hand, we want people to have access to the arts. We really, really do. We all do. But we also don't want to lose sight of what it means to be in theater. And that is a collective experience, that is a shared experience, that is in the womb of a theater. And because of all these unbelievable advances technologically, we can't lose our heart and soul of what we are and what that means to individual communities.
Right, you're not watching Hamilton on Disney Plus on your couch is never going to be the same experience as watching it in a theater.
No, but again, with respect to not everybody's able to go to theater or go. We understand the delicacy of that, but we luckily have a union to fight for what's the best for us and what's the best for union members.
Absolutely. I also wanted to ask you about a couple of your other endeavors. I know that you recently launched a hair care line that is focused towards women over 40.
Yeah, 40, I have to say 50, women over 40, 60. Which is weird. I'm 59, but within the beauty industry, there are these sort of areas within which you have to operate. I don't understand why, but all of the changes do start when you're 40.
Talk to me a little bit about how you kind of got into this particular hair care line.
Briefly, during the pandemic, I started a community online to just open up a conversation with women who were in my age bracket. And over the course of a few months, the number grew and grew and grew, and I kept being asked what I was selling. And I kept saying, I'm not monetizing you as people, but I'd like to hear what you need. And invariably, it ended up being hair care for this era of our lives. So I did a little dive into the white space, if there was one, and there's a tremendous amount of white space with regards to scalp health for women. And we're not just menopause, obviously, but menopausally from 40 up. There are many different biological changes that happen in a woman's body, and we looked at all of them, and it was all about scalp health. And we decided that we would not glut the industry with a million different SKUs. We wanted to start off with, we needed to establish ourselves as a knowledgeable entity, not just because I have hair, but because...
Really good hair, though.
Well, thank you, but I take care of it, and a lot gets done to it that damages it all the time. But really sort of looking at what's missing. So we have an instant shampoo that has hyaluronic acid in it. That's unheard of. There's not one on the market. So there were things that I wanted to do to address specific needs for women's scalp and hair health from the root all the way.
And obviously, throughout your career, you've been involved in a lot of enterprises and advertising for things and being a part of stuff. But this one, my understanding is this is your first one where it is yours all the way through. What is that like to kind of have that ownership?
Having sold everything for everybody else since I was 11 months old, true story, very enterprising. I knew it was time to invest not just my own money, obviously, but to do it for myself. You know, I'm an empty nester now. I was anticipating this period of my life and did not know what I was going to do with it. And starting this company was something that was just very important to me. And I invested my own money, and I very quickly learned I had to put in place a wonderful COO, a wonderful formulator, a wonderful board, an advisory board, all of these things that I did not know about when I started. But it was important for me in this era of my life to be steering it.
Sure, to be at the head. Just a reminder that we are taking questions from the audience. If anyone has any cards that you want to pass to Cecily in the back, or if you want to shoot that email to headliners@press.org. Very happy to ask questions as they start coming in. Brooke, I also want to chat a bit about the documentary that you did called Pretty Baby. And I wanted to see if you could just talk a little bit about why this documentary, why now?
I've been asked for years to do a documentary, and every time they pitched it, it would sound like an E! True Hollywood Story, or Where Are They Now, which is even worse. Ask any actor that question. But one of my best friends, she and her husband, George Stephanopoulos, had a new production sort of part of their deal. Mm-hmm. And they came to me and said, we would like to do our first documentary about you. Mm. And I couldn't find a reason why it was a good idea. It felt self-indulgent, I didn't understand, and so I gave it a lot of thought, and I said, if you can find a way to make it about something that's a bigger topic, mm-hmm. rather than just, my life in Hollywood or whatever, that we had to explore bigger ideas in it, then I would be willing to give them permission. They still could have done it unauthorized. I mean, I didn't have anything to do with the documentary. I gave them all my archives, but I didn't see the cut. I had nothing to say about the content. I just had to trust. And I think enough years had gone by, and it felt like I was in good hands.
What did you think about the overall product then?
I think they did what I had hoped for. It ended up becoming just a true exploration of sexuality of young women in America, mm-hmm. How it's changed. I was sort of right in the eye of the storm from a very young age. And, coming through it, but really now having two daughters, conversations that were spurred from the film with my 2 daughters, I'm not sure I would have really ever had. And it was enlightening to me. And I've had people come up to me, I mean, of all ages, and saying, this part resonated with me, that part resonated with me, that happened to me, this is something I identified, this gave me strength. And so when you see the diversity of people that are reacting to it, it's just a relief.
Yeah. Do you think when it comes to, since the documentary touches on this, when it comes to sexualizing young women in Hollywood, has it gotten any better from your experience?
Let me start by saying, I've been a part of that, and it can be argued I've been a part of the problem from the time I was a young child, right? So, but I was a child, and I did not know, and in Blue Lagoon, I had a body double. Like, nobody wants to know that, but I did. So there was a very sort of real part of it that didn't affect me as a child. Yet I was the one on the cover of magazines, and I was the one that we were supposed to look like. And so I fed into that narrative, but it paid my bills. So there was this real life sort of thing that was happening in my own life. I didn't know enough to be uncomfortable. I look back now and can't imagine that it all happened. I mean, most of my movies you couldn't even make today. Seriously. And that's because it's changed. The world has changed, and the protections are different. So the answer to the question is yes, I do think it's changed. I think people have become more verbal about it, and there are more protections for young people. I mean, when I was hired to do Pretty Baby, I didn't know this until much, much later in life. I was hired as a New York hire because there were more protections for young performers in LA than there were in New York. So they hired me as a New York hire so they could work me 12 hours a day. There were no protections for me. My mother, which is why she was so hated, she went to her lawyer in New York. We lived in New York, but she went to our lawyer in New York, and she got me switched to an LA hire. So when she came back to the set, I had a teacher, I had safety, I had hours that I couldn't be called, and of course production, absolutely hated her because she was costing them money. But now you don't have to worry about those types of protections. So with regards to children, yes, the sexualization of young women, I'm not sure we'll ever fully separate ourselves from it. Sex sells. You celebrate youth and beauty and sexuality, and that just is human nature. But I think now you've got very important women that are speaking out on the negativity that it actually feeds, And I've got 2 young girls, 18 and 21, and I'm shocked at what I see on TikTok and what I see on their feed and Instagram, and many times I feel helpless. But what we do is really talk about it. And we talk about body positivity and what that means. I was a symbol of something, but was probably more insecure than most people, physically. And so those are things that I'm trying to teach my girls. So I think it's gotten better. I just think, again, we have a long way to go.
Yeah. It sounds like there's more, at least, awareness.
There's more awareness, there are more conversations, there are more safety nets put into place. And people are willing to, and also young women are learning that it's okay to stick up for themselves. And I think that self-advocacy is something that I never knew existed. If you self-advocate, you're a bad girl. They won't like you. If you say this is uncomfortable or I don't like this, you're then labeled difficult. That's changed. People have to be listened to now in a way that they weren't when I was a child.
Well, that's good to hear.
That is good. Yes. No, and I think there is progress. Again, it's with all these things, there's progress, but there's still more to do.
We have a question from Ruthie Thierberg. for News Broadway, who asks, you previously mentioned your priorities include passing PAPTA and raising funds and awareness about the benefits of art nationally. Both are admirable and necessary. On a granular level, for the contracts of actors and stage managers of AEA, what is your top priority when it comes to contracts across the board? Is it pay, time off, an amount of coverage, limits the number of weekly performances? Some members have wondered how AEA leadership can be taken seriously during negotiations rather than AEA demands being seen as unreasonable. What are your thoughts?
AEA being seen as a musical?
Oh, sorry, being seen as unreasonable.
Oh, God, I was like, wow, I'm
If I said musical, it's only because I've had the Hamilton soundtrack playing in the back of my mind.
You know, it's all of that. It's always going to start with pay, right? Because that's what we need. Arts funding, we need money to give to people, and we need protections that they're getting it. Wages are always very important. There is safety. There are things like days off. There are things like having a stage manager have a second stage manager. You know, those are things that just have gotten sort of lost, and they think, oh, well, this person can handle it. Well, that's not fair. So there are so many different little elements to that we are fighting for, all of it, across the board. I mean, not just tax parity, but wages and days off and covers. And you know, it's amazing how much when you're in a production, there's always a few people who really just get asked to do too much. And that's not fair either. And they don't know that there is protections for them. There are protections for them.
Is there one thing that you think, and I'm trying to get at the heart of the question here, that is a particular priority? Is it pay, time off, number of shows? Or is it hard to pick a priority?
It's so hard to pick a priority with all of these things. I'm always going to start with pay because, you know, when I was elected into this and sort of put into these rooms and really started listening, you know, the producers are not going to like me. And there was like one that said, congratulations. And I was like, oh, yeah, just get ready. Well, but, you know, the producers are usually the people with the most money in bigger cities. That's not always what's happening in smaller cities, and that's where, you know, everybody's feeling it. But to me, you know, there's so many things that we get asked to do as performers. When you're exhausted, when you're hurt, you know, I mean, I've been on Broadway and I've been in different on tours, and there's always more that you get asked. Oh, well, just come into this rehearsal, or oh, we have to put a new person in. Just do this, and you're like, well, we spent our one day traveling to the next city, so that's not a day off. And they want us on stage the next day so we can sell out Cincinnati and put money in their pockets, and you've got people who are exhausted, who have either had to travel on a plane or a bus, and have had no days off, and then they're doubling up. I mean, we would do sometimes 7-show weekends. That's inhuman. I mean, a person can't, and that's why so many young performers, you know, are done by the time. I mean, you know, and I was a principal, and I had 7 surgeries on my feet, you know, and I'm not just a dancer. So there's so many little teeny things that would go a long way.
Sure. It seems like so much of it, for as visible as theater is, there's so much behind the scenes that is invisible, unseen, and not talked about.
Everything is behind the scenes except for that 2 hours that you're sitting there. The rest, none of that happens. None of that happens unless all of those other people are working, their asses off, seriously. And that is stage management, and that is, there's just the list continues of what it takes to put on a show, no matter where you are, and the manpower and the stamina that it takes.
We had another question from the audience. As a fellow mother of children the same age as yours, I'm wondering how you are doing personally as an empty nester. This time is so hard. That's the question.
I think I just took on this job. I'm writing a book. I started my own company. Clearly, I'm in complete denial. And I'm just pretending I'm away working and they're just at home with my dog. They come home a lot. And they still need things like money. They still call every day and all the time. And so the connection is still there. I'm trying to make the umbilical cord more of a rubber band. So I miss them. I miss those people that I lived with for so many years. I think that's the thing that I miss the most. But I have my dog, which is my little daughter now, and I'm very, very busy. And I'm lucky to know that my kids are strong enough to be okay on their own.
Well, Brooke, I know we are almost at the end of our lunch together. Before we wrap today's discussion, I do want to ask a final question, but let me quickly thank our headliners team leader, Donna Lyon-Liger, Lori Russo, and Jen Judson, and as well as the headliners team member who organized this today, Jamie Horwitz. Jamie, thank you again so much. And a huge thank you to Cecily Scott Martin and our executive director, Didier Soji. We don't do anything at the club without their immense help. And I'm very sure that events like the Tony Awards, you must have collected some very interesting swag, but nothing like this. The National Press Club mug, we have had the honor of giving it to dignitaries, to stars. You fall in that latter category, and also kind of the former too.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
So no, Brooke, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really an honor and a pleasure having you here. And I feel free to keep that on the, yes, exactly. Feel free to keep it on the podium in New York as you chair your equity board meetings. And now,
which I'm so good at.
You just need a really big gavel, and I find that the harder you hit it.
I've put my foot in my mouth on more than one occasion while chairing a meeting. But I'm learning.
Do you guys do Robert's Rules of Order? Because that's what always.
Robert and his rules. I never knew this guy Robert existed. I'm not sure I like him. I get where he's coming from. And I know I'm coming in late in the game, but oh boy, then they showed me the book. I was like, you've got to be kidding. I've got so much to learn, and now I got to read this.
We have a good PowerPoint we can share with you that we used to get all of us here up to speed.
If there's any kind of cliff notes.
Yes.
Because, yes.
I got that.
I've got to tell you really the one quick story that was just really kind of funny because you witnessed it. But someone was grilling me, and I didn't understand what was going on, and I didn't know you had to take a vote on each point. And so I thought we were like all in agreement in the room. I was like, this feels good. And so I turned to our lawyer as to how to answer the question because I'd never been in this position before. And she said, the point. I think she might have meant the point at which we should go back to start the voting again. I think that's what she meant. But I didn't know that, so I kind of went, well, what's your point? Thinking I was acting all powerful and presidential, and literally there was a person on Zoom, and he went, oh. Like, and I was like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing. I was like, I can go talk to a congressman, but I don't know about this Robert. I'm getting there.
Brooke, you did mention a book, and so I did want to quickly ask. You could give us a preview of that.
And the title of the book is Brooke Shields is Not Allowed to Get Old. It stemmed from a moment I had at a cocktail party where the gentleman, who I'm being kind by saying gentleman, was all flirty, and then he found out my age, and his tone changed immediately, and he said, I really wish you didn't tell me that. And a second before, he probably was like, oh, she was in a picture in my locker, and Blue Lagoon or something, or Calvin Klein's or something like that, and because he was all like, and then the minute he heard my age, and we were talking about wine, we weren't even talking about age, we were talking about wine age, but I was trying to make a correlation, like, does a 1965 bottle of Barolo get jammy? I don't know. But I thought I'd ask him that question to be a cocktail party talk, and he changed his whole demeanor. And I thought, you know what? Okay, people have imprinted on me since I was 15 or younger or whatever, but this is happening to women every day. We're not allowed to own our experience, and we chase, and I'm all for anything that makes you feel better, but we shouldn't be held to a standard that is unfair and unkind and diminishing and not really embracing and celebrating just what it takes to get to be 59, you know? The book's about aging and what it's like to be a woman.
Well, it
in
sounds
this
like
era.
a fantastic read. Brooke, I'm very much looking forward to reading it, looking forward to following the tax debate and all the fun stuff in Congress.
Thank you.
And looking forward to the next time that we all get to go to some live theater. So, Brooke,
Please come to, or go to all the theaters in your neighborhoods, and you go to all of them. We need to really protect it all.
yeah, Brooke Shields, thank you
Thank
again
you.
so much.